Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. I don't know why companies don't take this kind of thing more seriously. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Want to play Power Trip? Enjoy the berating from the manager. So I work in a grocery store as a member of the management team. However, my position is the lowest on the ladder. I guess you'd say I'm a shift manager. As a result, I tend to get talked down to and treated as if I don't know what I'm doing at times, despite doing this job longer than anyone else working in my store. Because I've been doing a lot of closing shifts lately, they've made me safe holder and responsible for running the end of day. On Monday, when I come in, I'm required to hand safe ownership to another manager as I'm rostered off for Tuesday. So I arrive at 3 p.m. on Monday to begin my shift, expecting to hand over at the end of the night as it's easiest to do then, and we have the time to spare. Two of my other managers, one of whom is the store manager, are supposed to be leaving at 3 p.m., so I go to the office, prepare myself a till, and I'm about to walk to the shop floor when one of my other managers, Chad, walks into the office and says the assistant store manager, Kyle, wants me to hand safe ownership to Chad right now. Me. What? Why? It's busy and the other two have to leave. Go and tell Kyle that we can do it later. Chad. Yeah, I don't know. I'll go tell him. It really is getting quite busy. So Chad leaves, I finish preparing my till, and Chad comes back into the office a couple of minutes later. Chad. Kyle said that you're not in charge and to do as you're told. Me, shrugging. Okay. I knew Kyle was going to get spoken to about wasting time at one of the busiest points of the day on a task that's simpler and quicker to do at the end of trade, but I've been ordered to do as I'm told. So Chad and I go through safe handover, which requires us to be both present to count the entire safe, confirm the amounts, and then hand the keys over. During counting, Chad miscounted a few things, leaving a large discrepancy which needed to be solved before handover was completed, which took us a bunch of extra time going over the numbers and finding the problem. Eventually, everything's counted, keys are exchanged, and Chad and I can finally go out to the shop floor to relieve the store manager, Gary, and the other store manager. Keep in mind, they were supposed to leave at 3 p.m., and it's now close to 3:30. As I bring my till to replace Gary, he's visibly furious, and he starts taking it out on me. Gary, what the hell took you guys so long in the office? You know it's busy, and you know we're supposed to have left. Before we could go further, I stop him. Me. Kyle wanted me to hand over safe to Chad. I told Chad it was a bad idea and to tell Kyle we could do it later, but he told Chad that I wasn't in charge and to do as he says. Gary looked disappointed, and I could see Kyle just across the way, knowing he heard that I just told Gary what had transpired, and watched his face drop from knowing he messed up by not listening to logic and experience and letting his power get to his head. Gary ended up grabbing Kyle, and I saw them walking to the office, Kyle's head hanging. For the rest of the shift, he was in a foul mood, and I heard from Chad, who'd overheard their conversation, that Kyle got a good berating. Kyle's a good guy, and I felt kind of bad, but if you're going to go on a power trip that's going to get me in trouble, hell yes, I'm going to sell you out. I'm not taking the blame for your mistakes and your inability to listen to the more experienced members of your team. And our next story. Ruin a department I helped create? Fine, whatever. I joined a company that was set up as a consultancy to a large corporation to repair their relationship amongst the local community that they were a part of. I was in the IT division. I was part of a team of 5 people who installed computers in local businesses, and it ran a billing package for these businesses. We trained their staff and supported everything. This was all done as a low-cost outreach and was very successful. This went fine for about 8 years until the top guy in the company left to join the corporation and a new guy took his place as director. The new guy, who wasn't really a problem, was more of a paper manager. A genius at it, really. But he left all personnel issues to the department managers. However, he didn't along with the IT manager, and she finally resigned after months of tense standoffs over various policy issues. Now, I was the most experienced staffer, and I might have had a chance to get her job, but the office grapevine said the director had already secretly selected someone himself. This was surprising, as we'd merged with the large corporation and all hiring was required to go through human resources, but he wanted to be able to replace our manager instantly, so he'd been grooming the replacement, so the moment she resigned, in a fit of anger during a meeting, he had her replaced right away. Remember how I said the director wasn't good at personnel? He wasn't good at hiring and interviewing either. The new IT manager was horrifically unqualified. Her resume was invented from top to bottom. She had no management experience, and as we discovered, she knew nothing about IT. How much nothing? She didn't understand the difference between Macs and PCs. She made a major purchase of new Office software for the entire office. Mac Office software. We ran MS-DOS on PCs at the time. Although Windows 95 had come out a few years earlier, we were locked into IBM PCs with DOS-based applications on a contract with IBM. Her resume boasted a deep programming background, but she didn't know what a subroutine was. It simply got worse and worse. Over the next few years, she deliberately drove out all the experienced staff. She would require highly granular timekeeping for all of IT, tracking who called in for support, when we spent support at a business or the corporation, even though there was zero use for this, as there wasn't even internal tracking for who used what. When we complied, including tracking the time to track the time, her increasingly complex needs for details started to take up to an hour each day. The director ended it. She also routinely took personal credit for projects done by her department, with no acknowledgement of the actual individual who performed the work. One by one, my co-workers left to other jobs, and in one case, she framed one guy for a failure she caused and got permission to fire him. She replaced everyone with people she'd known at previous jobs, regardless of their backgrounds and job skills. A COBOL programmer replaced one of our training and support people. He was a great guy, and miserable in the role she put him in. She hired another woman to replace another staff member, but all this woman had done before was author training manuals. Our training materials were all provided under our contract. I never figured out what she did aside from acting occasionally as a personal secretary, which made no sense since we had a secretarial pool. She also got paid 3 times what they got paid. As for me, my wife and I had our first child around this time, and I simply didn't care about issues of pride anymore. I was careful to CYA myself, because all I wanted to do was bring home a paycheck for my family. The IT manager took credit for everything I did. I was careful to document my work, and in many cases, her taking credit failed because it was too obvious she wasn't involved. She moved on to try and get me fired. Anyone who has done customer/computer support knows that you'll get customers you just cannot make happy. Usually just a personality conflict. In the past, we simply traded the call off to another member of the IT staff, and that would often do the trick. My manager tried to inflate all of these to fireable offenses. To my face, she would promise to have my back, as the original IT manager always did. She loved her staff and would take a bullet for us. Behind the scenes, though, she tried to build a case against me. The first time I realized this was a meeting between the director, one of our business consultants, my manager, and myself. I'd been given a heads up by the business consultant, and when I walked into the meeting, I had all my notes on my supposed failures. She made her pitch to the director, but the business consultant and I destroyed her and demonstrated to the director she was inventing things. She was humiliated, and I remained unscathed. The second time, an assistant manager at one of the businesses I'd recently installed a computer system at raised a huge stink. He'd been following me around during the install and questioned me. Turns out he was trying to set up a system at home to call into his office to get onto the network, which back then was a bigger deal than it is today. However, I'd actually done this for another business, but not this one. He'd made some random guesses as to what he needed and wasted $5,000 because it was all IBM hardware/software. He blamed me. Again, the IT manager told me she'd reviewed my notes and knew I was blameless. I wasn't stupid enough to believe her again. I got the business consultant to go to the head manager at the business and ask about this. It turned out the assistant manager there had never requested remote access internally, and the entire staff there supported my version of the events. Of course, my manager once again had tried to escalate this to a major failure. Remember those detailed notes/timekeeping she'd wanted? Well, even though the ridiculous depth of them was gone, I still kept them. She called another meeting, this time inviting senior management from the corporation as well. It was another embarrassing moment for her. I refuted all the claims made by her and the assistant manager of the business, and with documentation. My good friend, our business consultant, backed it all up, and the cherry on top, The head manager of the business called the senior management at our corporation to apologize for his assistant manager and to praise my work. My manager looked like the idiot she was, all because I continued to comply with the task/timekeeping she originally instituted to drive the old staff out. Now, she kept her job, mainly because our director would have to explain why he hired someone so clearly unqualified, and he couldn't because it violated HR policy to do so. But I know you readers out there want to hear some juicy revenge as well. That weekend, following that meeting, a major business's entire computer network I'd installed went down after a lightning strike. I remotely diagnosed it and knew it needed a simple hard drive replacement and a restore from a tape backup. I came in Monday. Before I could leave to fix the client, she called me into her office. She offered me a 3-month severance package, full pay, benefits, etc. They only offered these to management types normally. She hated me and wanted me gone. I told her I would gladly accept it, but didn't she want this client fixed? It was kind of a big deal. She said no. While I signed the legal paperwork, she rambled idiotically about my job performance, etc., but I just finished signing, took my copy of the papers, and told her that she didn't know anything about what she was talking about, and this severance proved that. I packed up my office and said goodbye to my friends, many of whom were shocked and crying over this, and I can't deny I was a little wet around the eyes too. I told them it wasn't a problem. And you know what? It wasn't a problem. I'd been building my own software company on nights and weekends for years, with full permission of my original manager. I walked out of there with 3 months of free salary into my own company, which was now paying me more than my old salary so that I could go full-time with my partners. Oh, and my friend who got fired? I used my contacts and found him a job. A better job, too. As for my manager, they took over 2 months to figure out how to replace and restore that hard drive to the business that had the lightning strike. I wasn't kidding about her hiring the wrong people for our jobs. That business likely badmouthed them because they barely retained 25 to 30% of the businesses as they lost them one by one over the next few years. My friends kept me up to date until they too left. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.